do a presentation about the tools into browsers in order to debug. Don't forget that this session will have a Q&A session at the end. So if at any point you have any question or if something is not really clear, don't hesitate to leave a little message and I will take the time to reply to all your questions at the end of this presentation. So let's now start the show with why a browser debugger is a developer best friend. So as you know, you use Odoo with your browser. And your browser has some tools in order to help you to troubleshoot or better understand the mechanism behind it. In order for you in this presentation to have a better understanding, you must have some basic knowledge about HTML, JavaScript, jQuery, CSS, and the promises concept. So let's see some useful browser development tools. First, to enable the development tools, you will need your browser and you will need to see how you can activate them. In this presentation, I will only focus on Chrome development tools, but they are all the same across all browsers. So let's have a look with the first tool, the Elements tool. Here I am on my Odoo's beautiful website, and I am currently on the Elements tab. As you can see, this is the first one that is currently selected. Basically, here you have all the HTML code of your page. Let's start with an example. Let's assume that I have my beautiful form, but in order to have a better look for my client, I would like to add a beautiful title just before the email. So here I select into the DOM tree the part which is relevant, which in this case is the email, and we can see in the HTML code that I have this OE login form which I will use for later. So let's keep in our mind this OE login form, and we will go into debug, settings, technical views, and if you need to be in debug mode in order to have access to all this views, and I will type into the search bar this OE login form, and I will be sure to use the view architecture. After that, we can see here that I will have my login view, and as this HTML part OE login form is only used on the login view, I have directly access to it. So I select this view and I will modify the code. And here I will add this div tag and I will put the message that I want to show to my client when they want to connect to my database. So here I decided to hide welcome to the secret LSC database. So what is the purpose of Elements? Here we have seen with an example that it allows us to quickly browse into the HTML code, in order to have access to certain view that may be complicated to reach by other means, and it will give a little preview. Let's see with the next slide what it will look like. So here we can see what is the result, but it's not really true, because here, if you can see on the right part, that I did edit the div tag in order to have h1, which is title in HTML. So basically, I modify arbitrarily the HTML code to have a quick preview of what it would look like in order to suit my custom needs. Don't forget that if you update the view like this, it may be deleted whenever you update the module that did add it. So this is just a preview. This is just a quick way to see how it may look like. And then if you're happy with the result, you can do a custom module if you want to do SH, for instance, in order to have this view for the rest of your database life. Let's continue with the console development tools. This is the second tab, and this is a little example on how it looks like and how it can be used. On it, you can run any JavaScript code you like. Don't forget that Odoo do use jQuery in version 13 at least, and you can run arbitrary code. So here, for instance, I just asked to the JavaScript code what was the content of the email fields, and we can see the two codes are equivalent, but it was LSE. So what is the purpose of the console tool? So as I already said, it is to run arbitrary JavaScript code. It can also be handy if you have some scripts that you cannot run by other means. For instance, if you want to pick 1 line out of 2 from a list view. And this is also the places where the errors, the JavaScript errors, are reported. And it's very important for us in the support tools when we have to debug these kind of issues, because this is the place to look. You can, we will also see afterward that when you have other tools, it can be handy to have the console tool at the same place in order to have access to the variable scope. We'll see, come back to this afterward. Let's continue with the sources. So as we already saw in Elements, you have the HTML into this tab, but in Sources, you have all the other files, all the other root sources that your website needs in order to run. For instance, JavaScript script, CSS files, etc., etc., etc. We can see here the hierarchy with the folders and an instance, the home menu JavaScript file, which is the script that runs into the page when you log in. So, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. Whenever you use sources, don't forget that to enable debug equal assets, you can see on internet if you don't know how to do that, because otherwise you will have the minified JavaScript code, and it will be very troublesome if you want to debug the code. And this is also the place where you can use breakpoints. So basically, this is the equivalent of the debugger in other IDE in browsers. You can also do some quick JavaScript modification if you want to see, oh, what will happen if I do this modification. Also, this is the place to do this kind of things. Here I have an example where I put a breakpoint at the action which is triggered whenever you press a button. So in these cases, I did add the breakpoint on the line 345 of this file. I did click the settings button, and boom, the code was paused. And I can see here what is the current context, what is currently happening on the JavaScript code. We can see on the right with the purple square that the menu ID, for instance, for the settings application is 4 in this example. Okay, this is just a basic example. It is mostly useful when you have real errors in JavaScript code that you can see in the console tab, if you remember. And here you can put breakpoint at these lines of errors in order to troubleshoot what's going on. Let's continue with the most important tool that I will present to you today, the network tool. So this is how it looks like. You have on the right different comments, and you have little green square, but let's analyze it together. We will first start off by looking at how Odoo architecture works when you send a request to the server. So here on my left, I have my users. So it can be either internal users, so this is the one that are logged in, that are doing sales, that are doing manufacturing, whatever. And I have also the external users. This is the one that are using the eShop, the one that are not authenticated, or the portal users. We will focus here just on internal users for simplicity's sake. So I have my internal user. Basically, it do some, some commands, it will ask for some information to the database, and we will see in more details how it happened. And then the database, so there is a server, will reply to me some result that I will use. We will focus on this right now. So let's take an example. So when my contacts page load, I have a lot of comments that are done, and I will focus here in the search read. So let's see what happened when I do this search read. So first of all, my website will generate what we call the payload. This is all the information that the website will send to the server in order to ask something. It will say, okay, server, I want to search read on Rails partner, and I want the ID, the display name, the color, the email, the phone, the picture, etc., and some context things like language, current time, etc., etc. So currently we are still on the browser, and it asks for this payload. We can see on the right that when I click the search read, I can go into the headers tab, and I can see in the payload what is the actual content which is sent to the database, which is summarized on my left. So the server receives the payload, and it will do the Python code execution in order to send the correct result. So in this case, it will first go into the dispatch, then the controller, then the model, so Rails partner in this case, then the ORM, which will ask to the database the relevant information that is needed. So in this case in particular, I did ask for Rails partner, so there is the SQL query with select star from Rails partner, blah, 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 and I have my results. And now my database, my server, sorry, will do this callback where it will send back to my browser the information that it asks to. So basically now I have the result. I have my 36 partners with their ID, display name, etc., etc., and it will be received back into my browser. We can see on the left picture that this is the actual content that is received from the server for the search read request. So we can see ID 14, display name as the interior, etc., etc., etc. And the last step is, now that we have the results on the browser, we will manipulate it the way we want. So I want to display the picture at this place with the name alongside, etc., etc., etc. So let's summarize. So the network tabs is the place where the request, the call, exchange can be seen. And whenever you choose a particular request, you can see in the header tab what is the content that is sent to the server, and into the preview or response tab, you can see what is the results which is received from the actual servers. So it can look a bit tedious, a bit troublesome, but it's actually very useful, and this is one of the tools that I use almost for every issue that I have in the support technical, because it helps to have a better understanding of what's going on, what are the mechanisms behind it, and what are the actual information that are sent and received. And it basically gives you a ton of information about Odoo, how does it work, with concrete example. Oops, sorry, wrong slide. So let's focus now on what was this green square. So this is called the waterfall. So basically, it's the order on which the requests are done, and how much time did it took, and for what reasons it took so much time. It also helps you to highlight performance issue to see if Odoo's code was slow or something like this. So whenever you click a request, you have the headers, preview, and response that we already seen. But there is also initiator and timing that can be useful. Initiator is the JavaScript code that creates the call. It can be very useful to breakpoint on it, so using the source app, because this is a place of the code where you can see what did trigger this call and how the results will be handled. But I'm not using it a lot of the time. And timing is also very useful because it highlights where did the request did spend the most time. You have three measures. You have the request sent, TTFB, and content download. Request sent is how much time did it took from your computer to the server to go. So if it is really slow, it means that you have a very bad connection with Odoo. The TTFB is the time that Odoo Python code took to execute your request. In this example, we can see that with progress bar, it took 20 seconds in order to execute on Odoo, but in this case in particular, it is normal because I did create 100,000 CRM leads in order to slow the process down. And the last one, the content download, is the time which it took to really fetch the total reply. So if it is slow, it means that you have a bad connection. But if the TTFB is slow, it means that Odoo did spend a lot of time to process it. So it can be performance issue. It depends. Oops, sorry, wrong slide again. So a little tip about network that can be useful is that if you right click and use copy as fetch, you can paste it into the console. Remember, second tab. And you can modify the way the request is done in order to create another arbitrary request. So it's basically the same request, but you can modify it the way you want. So in this example, for instance, I did paste it. We can see the second screenshot, and I deleted all the part which is highlighted in blue. So basically, I did the same fetch as before, but instead of fetching the color, the display name, etc., I did just fetch the ID, and we can see the result just under. We did have the same result as before, but instead of having all the information, we just have the ID of the contact. Here it's not very useful because this is an information that I already had. You can call like this arbitrary fields that you want on a specific field, for instance. Just be careful with this because in most of the case it doesn't have any impact because here I just fetch data. But whenever, if I try to do the same thing, for instance, with a post invoice call request or something like this, it may have some impact on the database because you ask for an action to make. So be careful with this kind of thing. Also, with this, it allows you to have a lot of information about the mechanism behind it, so it's very, very useful. So, that's just a little bit of more tricks about network, because it has a ton of tricks. Preserve log allows you to keep the request, because whenever the page change, the requests clear themselves. So if you are willing to keep all the requests, you can just check that and it will be done. You can use filter if you are searching for particular requests. If you know that you want to search on search read, for instance, or something like that. You can filter on XHR call, because most of the fetch are used using XHR. If you don't, you will have the fetch of the pictures and a lot of information that you don't need. You can also throttle your own connection. For instance, if you want to see what will be the result on a 3G connection or something like this. And that's basically it. Be careful with debug assets and the cache of your browser, because if the cache store some information, it may mislead the information that you will get with the network tab. So this is it for the network tab. We will quickly see some other tabs that may be useful for you. We will first start off with application, which is where all the cookies and cache information are stored. But in most of the case, this is not very useful. This is it can be handy if you have trouble with authentication, for instance, or this kind of things. It can be very useful to just clear all the cookies. But that's not really the case. You also have the performance, which is very useful when you have JavaScript issues, but this is not very useful as well. And you also have the sensors, on which you can override your current location. But be careful that it does it only in some context, so it won't work for the website, for instance. But in the Gantt view, where you have the time, if you want to simulate jet lag, you can override your location, and it will take into account the location that you specify here. So, in conclusion, what do we learn in this presentation and why the debugger is so useful? First of all, it gives us a ton of information. This is, I think, one of the best way to learn about Odoo's mechanism. It is available everywhere, because whenever you have your browser, so whenever you're using Odoo, you are able to use these tools. Yeah, but basically it gives you a ton of knowledge, and that's, I think, the best way to learn for Odoo. So that's it for this presentation. Thank you a lot for your attention. And if you have any question, we will just follow with the Q&A question and answer right now. Thank you very much.
C'est bon? Let's go.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Lohan.
Here.
Yeah, so you can still ask some question.
Yeah.
So we had first a debate about Chrome vs Firefox.
Yeah.
What is your point of view?
So whatever your browser, do as you feel. As Richard already said, it's a matter of taste. So there is no real reason to choose Chrome rather than Firefox or Edge if you want, or anything. Really, this is like you want. I use Chrome because this is the browser that I'm used to. But in terms of available action, this is exactly the same. So this is just a matter of taste. Do as you like. You personally, Thibaut, do you use Firefox or Chrome?
Yeah, I use both. I like both debuggers, so they're nice. I would say use the tool you prefer. You feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometime in the support, I did have some tickets that were obliged to use Firefox. So sometimes I were obliged to use their developer tools. So I can affirm that they are really, really similar. In most of the case, I didn't have any trouble to switch between one or the other. So really just a matter of taste. Do as you feel.
Okay, so we had also a small debate about the Python debugging vs browser debugger here, and they said Python debugging is more important.
Yeah, I do agree, but in some circumstances, indeed, Python debugging is mandatory. So for some time, for performance issues, for instance, you cannot really, if it is coming from the Python code, you cannot do anything on the JavaScript. So yes, you are obliged in this case to debug through Python. And yes, it's a matter of taste, but I personally think that using the network tool is already a first good step to learn a lot, and it already gives you a ton of information that you can then use to debug in Python. But yes, indeed, you can only debug in Python if you want. But in some cases, like if the performance issues are from the JavaScript code, in this case, you have no other choice than to use JavaScript and then the developer tool of your browsers.
Yeah.
Do you have any other question, Thibaut?
Yes, there is a question about OWL. So can we have developer tool extension for OWL like React or Vue provides?
So this is a really good question, actually, because I work in support, I didn't yet add any ticket concerning JavaScript in OWL. So to be honest with you, I don't really know. And maybe a new a new presentation on the matter will be very interesting. So we will see in the future, but personally I don't know. But as they use JavaScript in the backend, I'm pretty sure that you will be able to use the network as before. I don't think they did change a lot of things in this. We will just have probably to be used to the new interface and the way it works. But for me, I think it will be the same thing.
Yeah, and OWL is quite young, so I guess if there is a new extension coming, well, it will come later.
Future will tell.
Yeah. Maybe the community will work on that.
Sorry?
Maybe the community will work on that.
We'll see.
We'll see. So another JavaScript question. Hello, more explication about dataset in the controller, please. I don't know if you have idea for that.
Dataset in the controller. Let me see. Do you have a? I think I have a slide on the matter. Let me check. So, can you check with this person if he's talking about a specific slide, maybe? I think it's the one. Let me see. No, is it this one? No, I don't think so. Maybe it's one. Maybe it's this one? I don't know if the person in the chat is active to tell me if it is on a particular slide or if it is on a general thing.
Well,
otherwise I don't really understand what the question is about.
But in the pure JavaScript, there is also a dataset that are stored in the widget to be used and to be displayed. But if it's a question of JavaScript, the best is to go to the room of JavaScript developer and ask about it. You can go in the room, in the community room.
I don't think I really understand the question actually, so I prefer not to confuse people on things. So yeah, maybe talk with a JavaScript expert on the matter, and I'm sure that they will be really happy to answer your question about it.
Okay, we have another question.
Yes.
Why can we create a live template for predefined all Odoo views, method, or other basic stuff, so we can just add by a single click? Okay, so why?
Why are modifying views useful when you can directly edit the HTML image? You think?
No. Why can we create a live template?
I think live for. What does it mean by live template?
Wait, yes, what do you mean? If you mean...
I think they mean modifying the source like we did in this, not this case. Yeah, I think they mean this thing. I think they are meaning like, why would you need to modify the view when you can edit directly into the elements? So can the person in the chat confirm to us? We have a little bit of delay, so we may come back to it if it is.
Or maybe it's about creating, you're in your text editor and you just, in one click, you have a new method, you have a new view directly with all the information, so inherit ID, the ID record, and that stuff. Maybe the question is about that.
The editor in the website when you edit.
Or maybe it's not linked to.
I'm not sure.
But there is the scaffold command in Odoo if you want to create
a new module. Yes.
A template for your module.
Yeah.
I don't know if the question is about that.
Okay. Do you find any other question that might be relevant for the Q&A? Let me scroll.
No.
Let me
scroll back.
Hide the error pop-up to end user in front end.
Hide the error pop-up.
Let's see. Do you have maybe a last question to ask me? Otherwise, we will end up this Q&A session. This is the last time that you will ask a question. It's time to work on Firefox tool again. After a long time, I am using Chrome tool since long.
Yeah, that's right. No, but Firefox tool is really good.
Yeah, maybe I should switch to Firefox indeed. But I don't know. I'm just used to Chrome, and I have my habits, so I'm not willing to change for now. At least. Sorry for all Firefox lovers, because if I use Firefox, I will be the Chrome users will hate me. So I do have to do a choice. I'm sorry for you. So this is it for the Q&A, and thank you everyone, and enjoy your day. Coupé.